So let me begin this review as I do with all my phone reviews with a disclaimer. I use this phone as my daily driver for 5 days. Got a chance to really get to know how to use it, all the nuances, and started my love affair up again with Windows Phone. So let me start with call quality. That's really the most important thing when it comes to phones. No matter how many megapixels the phone's got, and if it doesn't make good phone calls, it's not gonna be very good for you. And so not surprisingly, call quality is pretty awesome. Todd tested his review unit in New York, and he had some different issues. You could read the full review, hit the link down below if you wanna see his thoughts on how it performed in New York City, including tethering, which I did not test, but I had no dropped calls at all, had a really strong LTE antenna, and performed very well. Speaker volume was actually pretty loud as well, so if you rely heavily on speakerphone, no problem at all. So we're gonna break this review up into several parts. We're talking about the hardware, we're gonna talk about the software, we're gonna talk about the camera, and we're going to wrap it all up and give this guy a full Techno Buffalo 1 out of 10 score. So looking at the Lumia 1020, it's a very awkward looking phone. If you look at it from the bottom down, it looks like a normal Lumia device. The polycarbonate feels awesome, it's really well built, but as soon as you start looking at the top of the device, it looks a little strange. It's got this giant camera hub. Now of course it's understandable because you're packing 41 megapixels in here, but that does do some sort of odd things. So the first thing I found, the very first time I picked up the phone, was it's really top heavy. Usually when I hold the phone, my finger comes along the back and I hold it. If I want to scroll, I just scroll with my finger. If I let go though, the phone starts to tilt forward. You have to make sure you secure the phone on the bottom while you're using it to do any sort of one or two-handed scrolling. It's a bit cumbersome. Another issue is when you put it down on a table, it's got a huge rock on it. So if you put the phone down and you want to type or you want to watch a video, it's going to rock back and forth. And because it's going to rest, only the lowest point of the phone is what's going to hit your table or your surface. It's that camera lens, and this metal here scratches very, very easily. Something definitely to keep in mind. Doesn't matter what color you have, either the yellow, the black, or even a white version, this color is still the same, so you're always going to have that issue. So definitely watch out for scratches. The build quality though is typical Nokia, or Nokia depending on where you live. It is absolutely outstanding. Like all Nokia phones of recent history, this thing is built like a tank and feels absolutely awesome in the hands. I love there's dedicated camera button. I like that Microsoft is mandating that's there. One thing I did have some issues with was the location of the power and lock button, located below the volume rocker. Now that's just personal preference. I'm used to it being above from Samsung phones, but if you're used to using previous Nokia devices, it's gonna feel like second nature. If you're coming for something else, definitely be aware that that's how it's going to work. Other than that, the hardware is exactly what you'd expect. It is awesome. Nokia nailed the hardware out of the park. I wish they could have been gone away with that camera hump, but I'll deal with it for that 41 megapixel awesomeness. So a couple crazy things about the build quality on the hardware. If you shake it ever so slightly, you can hear the ball bearings in the camera move, and that's okay. Nothing's wrong with your phone. Nokia actually advertises that it does this, though I had to look it up and ask, what that noise was, but you can definitely hear it. So the big story here hardware-wise, that 41 megapixel camera, it captures 34 megapixel photos and a 5 megapixel picture at a 16:9 aspect ratio, or 39 megapixel and 5 megapixel in a 4:3 aspect ratio. Display resolution on the phone though is super low. At least by flagship standards, it's got a 1280 by 768 pixel resolution, so all your zooming and stuff isn't gonna look as crisp as it would on a 1080p display. That's more the fault of Microsoft though than it is of Nokia. I'm not gonna go too in depth to the software. It's Windows Phone 8 as we've seen it in previous generations. Actually 13 months have passed since Windows Phone 8 was initially announced, and everything about Windows Phone 8 is all here. Nokia though did do some really cool things, and the first one I talk about is the camera app that Nokia is calling the Nokia Pro Cam. This is where you're going to control all of the awesome functionality and manual controls you can get with the Lumia 1020 and its PureView camera. You can get really granular or let it do all the hard work for you. I really like the UI. They use sort of a half circle to be able to control everything. It's a really intuitive way to be able to control everything on the phone, from white balance to ISO to really everything else you can do on a DSLR you can do on the 1020. It's really impressive. For someone who's maybe not the most camera savvy guy in the world, I really enjoyed playing with it and seeing the things change in real time on the display. When it comes to the camera software, Nokia hit this one absolutely out of the park. It is as easy to use as you can expect. They did some awesome things with exposure, and I can't say enough how great the camera is. But for a phone whose really main selling point is the camera, you would expect it. And if you're really looking for a device that you can use as maybe a DSLR replacement, or at least a replacement for your point and shoot, I really have no worries at all about recommending the 1020. One thing I really do hate about the software is that photos can only be backed up to SkyDrive. I love Google Drive. I wish there was some sort of third-party option, but perhaps that'll come at a later time. All right, next let's talk about battery. This thing's rocking a 2000 milliamp hour battery. Let me tell you a little bit about my usage, so at least you can put things into perspective. Usually I get up around 7 a.m., I pull it off the charger. I've got 2 emails being checked every 5 minutes, maybe about an hour or so of phone calls, mostly connected to Wi-Fi at home or at the office, but LTE radios are always turned on. Some light video viewing, some gaming, and just generally the phone just sitting idle most of the day. I was very easily able to get through a full day of battery life, usually plugging it in around 11 o'clock at night with about 50% to 45% of battery life. But, and this is a huge but, if you use the phone's camera quite a bit, you're going to drain your battery life like crazy, especially if you use that xenon flash, which is really one of the selling points of the phone. You're going to be surprised how quickly all those milliamp hours are depleted. If you use the camera, you're going to notice probably about a 20 to 30% decrease in battery life. Just taking a 5-minute video and about 15 pictures, I saw almost 20% of my battery life go away at the end of the day versus what I had otherwise. So really, if you're gonna be a heavy shooter, be very careful what you're going to do with battery life, or you might wanna look at the camera grip, which has an external battery already built into it. All right, so I talked about the camera software. Let's talk about the camera itself. This is really the main selling point of this device, and it really merits its own section of the review. We did a full camera comparison with the Lumia 1020 versus the HTC One, the iPhone 5, and the Samsung Galaxy S4. Hit the link down below to check all those out. You can see what they look like, both cropped and at full resolution. You can really get a sense of how they performs in low light and highlight in different settings, see if it's the right device for you. So the moral here, as expected, the camera is really awesome. The 41 megapixel sensor felt like a spy camera most of the time. So Todd and I definitely agree this is our favorite camera phone so far. There's a bit of lag when you launch the camera, about 6 seconds or so when you hit the button so you can snap a photo. There is lag also during the photo shot, no rapid fire like on Android phones or iOS, but that's worth it for me to get those high-res images. And again, the camera software is absolutely awesome. Nokia Smart Cam is great for action shots, adding motion blur and more. And the Nokia Creative Studio is really fun for tweaking colors and really getting into the image and making sure you can get stuff exactly the way you want it. So what's the verdict on the Lumia 1020? Nokia did an incredible job of what they had to work with. Where the phone falls short is in the Windows Phone side. 13 months of an operating system is really a long time, and Windows Phone is starting to show its age. The low resolution, dual core specs really aren't what people are expecting. The biggest downfall, I think, of the 1020 is its launch price. By the time you watch this video, the price may already be slashed, but $300 for a 2-year contract is crazy. Especially when you consider the phones you could get without a subsidy for almost the same price. It's really hard to recommend the 1020, but it is for a certain subset of people. If you're looking for a camera that's absolutely outstanding, you don't want to carry a separate point and shoot with you, or maybe you don't want to carry a low-level DSLR, the 1020 is really, really awesome. If you're looking for a phone that just takes good pictures, you can look at the HTC One or Samsung Galaxy S4. The hump is very weird to get used to. It feels like a little bit awkward in the hands, and for that price point, I just can't recommend a Windows Phone device at $300. Now, perhaps Windows Phone 9 will totally change my opinion. It will get a software update that'll make this phone the one to beat, but at least right now I've got a really hard time saying, hey, this is the phone you should get. So the final verdict here, if you want a phone that's got an awesome camera, you don't want to carry a point and shoot or DSLR with you when you go out, the 1020 is going to be an awesome choice. If you want a good phone that's going to do everything and also take decent pictures, you might want to look at an Android or iOS offerings. You're going to get sort of the best of both worlds. You're certainly not going to get that crazy zoom where you can zoom in and see absolutely everything like the needle in a haystack, but you are going to get a pretty decent camera. It's a tough phone to recommend. Overall, this gets a pretty solid 8 on the Techno Buffalo scale. So thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed our full review of the Lumia 1020. Please give the video a thumbs up. We most definitely appreciate it. And again, all the links I mentioned will be right down below, including the full review, which is going to go into much more detail on the site at technobuffalo.com. Thank you guys for watching. I'm John Rettinger. I'll see you in the next video.
What's up, everyone? John here. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, I certainly hope you did. Click on the subscribe button right under me in my pants region to get tons more tech videos from Techno Buffalo. We've got awesome unboxings, comparisons, reviews, recaps, and everything else you can think of in the tech world right here on the channel. Join the herd today. If you want to check out some more content, just click right over this way to see some other recent videos. See you guys next time.